In the vast and often maligned pantheon of self-help literature, few texts command the monolithic reverence of Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. First published in 1936, amidst the economic desolation of the Great Depression, the book arrived as a beacon of hope, promising a clear, actionable pathway to social and professional success. Its principles, presented as simple, folksy wisdom, resonated with a populace desperate for a competitive edge. For nearly a century, it has remained a perennial bestseller, its title a cultural shorthand for mastering the art of interpersonal relations. Millions have sworn by its advice to smile, to remember names, to listen intently, to make others feel important. These are, on the surface, the hallmarks of a kind and considerate individual. Yet, to accept Carnegie's work at face value is to overlook the profound and unsettling philosophy that underpins its seemingly benign techniques. To read it with a critical eye in the 21st century is to uncover a masterclass not in genuine human connection, but in strategic social engineering. It is a manual for the performance of self, a guide to manipulating human psychology for personal gain, where relationships are not cherished ends in themselves, but instrumental means to an end. This essay will argue that How to Win Friends and Influence People, despite its enduring popularity, promotes a deeply problematic worldview that prioritizes transactionalism over authenticity, superficial harmony over necessary conflict, and the curated persona over the genuine self. In doing so, it provides a blueprint for a world of pleasant but hollow interactions, ultimately devaluing the very relationships it purports to enrich.
The central tension in Carnegie's work lies in the irreconcilable conflict between his frequent exhortations to be sincere and genuine and the fundamentally instrumental nature of his entire project. The book is not titled How to Build Meaningful, Reciprocal Relationships. It is titled How to Win Friends and Influence People. The language of victory and influence immediately frames social interaction as a zero-sum game, or at best, a strategic campaign where friends are assets and influence is the prize. Carnegie's core principle, from which almost all others flow, is to arouse in the other person an eager want. He illustrates this with a simple analogy. The only way on earth to influence other people is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. He is correct in his psychological assessment. Appealing to self-interest is a powerful motivator. The ethical ambiguity, however, arises from the application. The goal is not to genuinely help the other person achieve their want, but to align their want with your own objective. The other person's desire is not the focus, but a lever to be pulled to achieve your own. Consider one of the book's most lauded techniques: become genuinely interested in other people. Carnegie argues that you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Again, the advice seems virtuous, but the motivation presented is not the joy of discovery or the moral good of valuing another human being. The motivation is to make more friends, a quantifiable social gain. He tells the story of a magician, Howard Thurston, who succeeded because every time he went on stage, he would say to himself, "I love my audience. I love my audience." It wasn't necessarily about a deep, abiding affection, but a psychological trick to project warmth and win them over. The interest is not an authentic state of being, but a tool to be deployed. This instrumentalist approach reduces complex human beings to a set of predictable psychological triggers. The book operates on a simple, almost Pavlovian model of social interaction. If you provide the stimulus of praise, you will receive the response of compliance. If you offer the stimulus of rapt attention, you will be rewarded with affection and trust. Carnegie's anecdotes, while charming, consistently reinforce this transactional reality. He speaks of a manager who transforms a sullen employee by praising a single, minor piece of good work. He details how he won the cooperation of a disgruntled post office clerk by complimenting his head of hair. In every case, the sincere compliment is not a spontaneous expression of admiration, but a calculated investment made with the expectation of a specific return, better service, improved morale, or a signed contract. This fundamentally reframes the nature of kindness. Kindness is no longer a virtue to be practiced for its own sake, but a currency to be spent. It transforms compliments into flattery, listening into data gathering, and empathy into a strategic gambit. The modern reader, increasingly attuned to the nuances of emotional intelligence and the importance of authenticity, can easily see through this veneer. We have all experienced the salesperson whose interest in our day feels scripted, the networking acquaintance whose questions are prelude to a sales pitch. This is the Carnegie method in action, and its effect, once recognized, is not to build trust, but to breathe cynicism. It teaches us to be suspicious of kindness, to question the motives behind a friendly gesture, and to see social life as a landscape of competing interest rather than a community of shared humanity. The tragedy of Carnegie's philosophy is that in teaching everyone to become a master persuader, it creates a world where no one can be trusted.
A direct consequence of this manipulative framework is the profound erosion of personal authenticity. Carnegie's teachings encourage the reader to construct and maintain a carefully curated public persona, a winning self that is perpetually agreeable, unfailingly positive, and meticulously designed to please others. This performance becomes a full-time job, governed by a strict set of rules. Rule 1. Smile. Carnegie dedicates an entire chapter to this simple act, presenting it not as a natural expression of happiness, but as a conscious tool of influence. He quotes a Chinese proverb, "A man without a smiling face must not open a shop." The smile is a part of the uniform, a business asset. He advises practicing it in front of a mirror, transforming a spontaneous emotional expression into a rehearsed, muscular action. The underlying message is that your internal state is irrelevant. What matters is the external signal you project. If you are not happy, perform happiness. Rule 2. Remember that a person's name is to that person the sweetest and most important sound in any language. This is perhaps his most famous piece of advice. On its face, it's a simple act of respect. But within the Carnegie system, it becomes another technique for psychological leverage. Remembering a name makes the other person feel recognized and important, which in turn makes them more favorably disposed towards you. It's not about truly seeing the individual. It's about using their name as a key to unlock their goodwill. The proliferation of customer relationship management software that automatically inserts a client's name into an email is the logical, technological extension of this principle, a depersonalized, automated performance of personal connection. Rule 3. Make the other person feel important and do it sincerely. Here again, the qualifier, sincerely, clashes with the calculated nature of the act. The goal is to find something to honestly admire. But what if you find nothing? The implication is to look harder, to mine for some minor detail you can praise, because the ultimate objective is not the expression of truth, but the production of a feeling in the other person. This is the essence of what sociologist Arlie Hochschild would later term emotional labor, the management of one's feelings and expressions to fulfill the emotional requirements of a job. Carnegie, decades ahead of his time, effectively turned all social life into a service industry job, where every interaction requires the performance of a pleasant, accommodating demeanor. The psychological cost of this constant performance is immense. It creates a dissonance between the inner self and the outer persona, a gap that can lead to feelings of alienation, inauthenticity, and imposter syndrome. When your success is built upon a carefully constructed facade, you live in constant fear of the mask slipping, of your true, unsanitized self being revealed. Furthermore, it inhibits the development of true intimacy. Genuine relationships are built on vulnerability, on the shared experience of our whole selves, our flaws, our disagreements, our moments of anger or sadness. By advocating for the relentless suppression of any negative or potentially disagreeable trait, Carnegie's method ensures that relationships remain in the shallow end of the pool. One may win many friends in the Carnegie sense, a wide network of amiable acquaintances, but one risks sacrificing the deeper, more resilient bonds that can only be forged in the crucible of authentic self-disclosure.
Perhaps the most dangerous and socially regressive aspect of Carnegie's philosophy is its outright hostility to disagreement and conflict. The only way to get the best of an argument is to avoid it, he declares unequivocally. He portrays arguments as battles that are always lost, even when won, because they engender resentment and injure pride. His solution is to sidestep, to agree with your adversary quickly, to concede points, and to never tell someone they are wrong. While avoiding needless squabbles is certainly prudent, this blanket prohibition against conflict is a recipe for intellectual stagnation, ethical cowardice, and the perpetuation of injustice. Constructive conflict is the engine of progress. It is through the rigorous debate of ideas that scientific theories are refined, that innovative solutions are born, and that societies move forward. A team of engineers who avoid arguing about a design flaw out of a misplaced sense of politeness will build a faulty bridge. A company whose employees are afraid to tell a CEO he is wrong will inevitably make disastrous business decisions. Carnegie's advice, if followed universally, would create a world of groupthink, where the desire for harmony overrides the critical appraisal of ideas.
To be fair, How to Win Friends and Influence People must be understood as a product of its time. Written in the 1930s, it reflects the anxieties and aspirations of a specific historical moment. This was the era of the burgeoning American corporation, the rise of the salesman as a cultural hero, and a rigid, hierarchical social structure. The economy was in shambles, and securing and maintaining a position within this new corporate ladder was a matter of survival. In this context, Carnegie's advice was intensely practical. His audience was primarily white-collar men striving to get ahead in a world where conformity and agreeability were highly valued. The ability to smooth over conflicts, to charm superiors, and to build a broad network of contacts was a tangible asset. The book is, in many ways, a survival manual for the mid-20th century organization man. It teaches the art of playing the game, of managing perceptions, of pleasing the boss, and of never rocking the boat. However, the world of 1936 is not the world of today. Contemporary society, at least in its ideals, has moved toward valuing authenticity, diversity of thought, and transparency. The modern workplace, especially in creative and tech industries, often prizes disruptive innovation and radical candor over quiet conformity. The rise of social media has created a culture where inauthenticity is often swiftly and mercilessly exposed. The rigid hierarchies Carnegie wrote for are being replaced by flatter, more collaborative structures. In this modern context, much of Carnegie's advice feels not just dated, but counterproductive. A manager who only offers praise and never constructive criticism will fail to develop their team. An employee who constantly avoids arguments will be seen as lacking conviction and leadership potential. A person whose online and offline persona is one of relentless, saccharine positivity is likely to be perceived as insincere or even deceptive. The book's worldview is also conspicuously blind to issues of gender, race, and power that are central to modern discourse. The principles are presented as universally applicable, but they implicitly assume a playing field where the only significant variable is individual personality. The book has nothing to say to a woman experiencing sexism in the workplace, or a person of color facing systemic bias. To advise them to simply smile and not argue is to ignore the structural realities of their situation and to place the burden of resolving systemic issues on their individual performance of pleasantness. This is not just naive, it is actively harmful, as it can encourage the acceptance of unacceptable circumstances. Conclusion: beyond influence toward connection. How to Win Friends and Influence People endures not because its philosophy is sound, but because its promise is so seductive. It offers a sense of control in the often unpredictable realm of human interaction. It presents a world that is fundamentally knowable and conquerable, a series of social puzzles that can be solved with the right set of techniques. The book's principles do, in a limited mechanical sense, work. If you flatter people, listen to them talk about themselves, and smile pleasantly, you will likely be perceived as more likable in the short term. The critical question, however, is not whether the techniques work, but what they cost. The price of Carnegie's influence is authenticity. The cost of his conflict-free world is truth. The value of the friends he teaches you to win is questionable. These are not relationships of mutual respect and genuine vulnerability, but networks of utility built on a foundation of strategic performance. To truly connect with others in a meaningful way requires a radically different approach. It requires the courage to be vulnerable, to show up as our imperfect, authentic selves. It demands genuine curiosity, not as a tactic, but as a sincere desire to understand another's world. It necessitates the willingness to engage in difficult conversations, to disagree with respect, and to hold ourselves and others to a standard of integrity. It means seeing people not as targets to be influenced or obstacles to be managed, but as fellow human beings worthy of unconditional positive regard. Perhaps the most enduring lesson from a critical reading of How to Win Friends and Influence People is as a cautionary tale. It shows us a path to social success that is ultimately a lonely one, populated by admirers but lacking in true confidants. It reminds us that there is a profound difference between being liked and being known, between having influence and having impact, between winning a friend and earning one. In our quest for connection, we would be wise to choose the latter, For while the path is more difficult and the rules less clear, the destination is infinitely more rewarding.
If you have any questions at all, or your own thoughts on this book, drop a comment down below. I'll do my best to answer every single one. And if you found this critical look at self-help helpful, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Wombat Wanderer, and ring that little bell so you don't miss out on our next deep dive.